welcome to the first of 3 webinars on supporting your child to learn. The first one today is recognising their feelings. The second is being held next Tuesday, the 12th of May at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If there's anything in particular that you'd like to cover in the contents of any of these webinars, please let us know. We're taking questions throughout the webinar and they will be answered at the end. Could you please refer your questions to Sophie? I will just mention also that I'm in Perth, and of course today we have forecast a storm that only happens once or twice a year, but it has to be today. My concern is for the stability of the internet connection. If in the worst case scenario we end up losing connection, we will send out a recording of this webinar. We will also be sending out links to all of the information mentioned in this webinar. I'm Robin Smith, the National Telephone Helpline Manager for NOFASD Australia, and can be contacted on 1800 860 613 if anyone has any queries or may just want to talk. And I am joined today by Cheryl.
Hi everyone, my name's Cheryl Deadman. I'm Chair of the Board of NOFASD Australia and also a parent of a teenager who is living with FASD.
Thank you, Cheryl. And we're joined also by Sophie.
Hi, thanks Robin. I'm Sophie Harrington and I'm the National Partnerships and Education Manager for NOFASD. Welcome.
Thank you. So NOFASD Australia acknowledges and pays respect to the past, present and future traditional custodians and elders of this nation and the continuation of cultural, spiritual and educational practices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. So today I'd really like to know how you're feeling. Have a think about that. At the moment, we have just had so many changes happening that are totally out of our control. We have no control over them all. And everyone's having very mixed feelings about that. Some of them have lost their jobs. We can't travel. Holidays have had to be cancelled. We can't go to the playground, visit family or friends. And now many parents are having to support their children to learn from home. And so we found other people though, sometimes have thought, okay, you know what, this is quite nice. I don't have to take my child to this appointment or that appointment. So some are feeling that a little bit of stress is taken off. So this Monash University study on disenfranchised grief was done by Professor Jane Fisher and researcher Maggie Kirkman. Disenfranchised grief is a term applied to experiences of a loss that might not be recognised, either by the person experiencing the loss or by others. As with recognised grief, such as a death in the family, disenfranchised grief is accompanied by disbelief and shock, wishing reality was different, or as it was before the loss, and then the uncertainty and the sadness as reality grows. Disenfranchised grief can be more psychologically damaging than grief that is recognised and supported. Cheryl was the first person to actually alert me to disenfranchised grief on this, because she said that is how she felt when she first had to start homeschooling her son. Cheryl, would you mind sharing your experience?
I'd love to. Thanks, Robin. I'm really pleased to have this opportunity to talk about disenfranchised grief and how it impacted our family in the past from a similar situation to what's happening right now. So a number of years ago, my husband and I made the difficult decision to withdraw our son from mainstream schooling just a few weeks into his schooling life, and we began homeschooling. Homeschooling is different to learning from home, but is all just as relevant when thinking about disenfranchised grief. So it wasn't a decision that we wanted to make, but it was a decision that we had to make. In the beginning, there was a feeling of loss, the opportunities for our son, saying goodbye to the only form of schooling that we knew. Our older son had actually already been through mainstream schooling, so it was just what we expected would happen with our younger son. Being a part of a school community, school sports, which was a big one for me, school fetes, concerts and parent groups, they were really expectations on what we thought was actually going to happen. And then it was satisfying the expectations of family, friends, and the community, because everyone goes to school. And initially there were feelings of relief, no more horrendous daily battles for attendance, no longer needing to battle for understanding from teachers and the education system, no more pressure to fit into a system that had no way of providing for what our son needed. I no longer needed to feel pressured to make our son do things that he was actually unable to do. And I could let go of the feelings of inadequacy every time a teacher would say, but he was fine when he was here today, only to notice his shallow breathing and pale complexion. I did not have to endure the outbursts that would always follow after every period of time he spent at school. So it should have been plain sailing from here. But leaving a system of the only normal that you know is a grief. My husband and I were on our own. We didn't know anyone at that stage who homeschooled. We really felt like radicals. And our lives changed. The visions and plans that we had were just disintegrated. I tried to continue with my own business, but it was short-lived, because teaching someone with FASD is full-on supervision and assistance. My husband and I no longer had opportunities for the activities we had planned to do once our son was at school. So what about our community and their response to us? This can best be described as me constantly having to check to see if I'd grown another hair. I can remember walking down the street one day and seeing another parent coming along in front of us whose child goes to the school that our son was going to for those few short weeks. And she just crossed the road. I think it must have just been too confronting for her to have to think about talking to the parents who'd withdrawn their son from mainstream schooling. Others would pretend not to have seen us if we're in a shop, or if there was any acknowledgement, it would be very short-lived. Then there were people from the well-meaning community members, our friends and family. In our community, if we were out and about during school hours, the usual comments would be directed to our son: "You're wagging school today," which he was often very offended by, or "No school today?" And initially we didn't know how to respond, but eventually we would just reply with, "No, we homeschool." And the look on faces would just often be priceless. Sometimes people would just start fidgeting, unsure what to say. Others would be genuinely curious and want to know what sort of work we do. Others would want to know how we follow the curriculum. Then there were, and still are, the people who want evidence. Are you checked? How do you know that they're learning correctly? How will they get into uni? And the big one, what about socialisation? And that's a topic for another day. So finally, there was another group called the know-it-alls. These people were sure that you knew nothing, and they had to teach you what you should be doing and how you should be doing it. All of these responses just continually added to the grief. And all of this was a disenfranchised grief. There was no exit from mainstream schooling ceremony. There were no supports or information to help us through. Often there was just silence from all of the people in our inner circle of relationships. Just like after the loss of a loved one, people did not know what to say. It was grief, but without the usual supports. So right now, what's happening? Well, the disenfranchised grief I've just talked about may be how you or someone you know is feeling right now. Just as I had not chosen our situation all those years ago, you too have not chosen for your children to be learning from home. You may be feeling overwhelmed and isolated, maybe even scared. Some days may be okay, and other days may be ones you'd rather forget, and I've had plenty of them. I really want to reassure you by saying, all of this is normal. Back to you, Robin.
Thank you so much for sharing, Cheryl. And I'd ask Sophie, if she can too, to support her first day from when she was teaching her children from home.
Thanks, Robin. I'm saying this as a parent and with my NOFASD hat on too. And I've got two teenage children. One of those has ADHD, and I thought I was organised, I was all planned, everything was going to go just as I'd expected it to. I'd looked at all of the online platform that our school uses, and I thought I had it down pat. So on day one, I'd informed my employer that the first 2 hours of the day, if it's okay, I'm going to take some time off. I'm going to get the boys started and get going with today's learning to start our home learning experience. And I think about 15 minutes into it, I realised I don't have this. And I was actually really quite overwhelmed. Now, one of my roles within NOFASD is as a facilitator. So I kind of thought that I would be okay doing this with my children. So I was very fortunate that, I have an employer who's very understanding, and I was able to phone up and say, guess what, guys, today I'm going to take the day off, because I realised I wasn't going to be able to manage to homeschool my children or home learn my children, if you like, and support them and do my job on that day. So I was very fortunate because I'm surrounded by people who understand, obviously, and a great employer. However, what I felt I needed to do was to take that time off. And then I received a letter that was sent through, that was received by somebody else. And it was from the principal of their school. And what's actually happened since then is that NOFASD created a blog around this letter because we thought it was really valid and great to share in the current climate. Now, I won't share that whole letter with you. As Robin's explained, you will get a list of the links that are in our presentation today. But I did just want to read the last paragraph because it really resonated with me and helped me on that day. So at this time, your child's emotional well-being, physical and mental health are more important than their academic knowledge and skills. If the first three aspects are impacted or neglected, it is neurologically impossible for new information and skills to be learned or remembered. In the months ahead, your child may forget or even refuse to do the learning activities or schoolwork provided by our teachers for supported home learning. But they will remember the fun new things they learn and do with you. The cuddles while reading, the measuring and counting while cooking, the gardening, the creating, the dancing, the games, and how you made them feel over this time. And I guess as a parent, I really just wanted to share that, there is hope, there is light at the end of this tunnel.
Thank you, Sophie.
We didn't become teachers overnight, my hunch. No worries.
Thank you very much for that. And I think that's very important to remember. The other thing I'd like to remind you of too, to keep in mind all the time, which I find very difficult myself, is dysmaturity. If I'm working with an individual that has FASD, they may be 18 years of age. They have the expressive language of a 21-year-old. So you sort of think, yes, they understand. You're having this wonderful conversation, but you often forget that they have the comprehension and emotional maturity of someone that's 6 years old. And I think this is one of the most important things to keep in mind when working with your child. And to add to the confusion on dysmaturity, living with someone with FASD has been described as living every day with a lamp with a short in it. People with FASD have good days and they have bad days. On their good days, they can reliably complete tasks, process and self-regulate and at their developmental level. And imagine just the light is fully switched on. However, they also have days when the light is flickering. So what they can remember in the morning, they may not be able to remember in the afternoon or a few hours later. And then there are those days that there is just nothing happening, that there is no light on at all. And on those days, you've just got to realise that, okay, it's not going to happen today. We just do what we can. Because you may have plan A, you may have plan B, but then there's real life. And schools, teachers, education department, other parents and your child's expectations, they can be quite high. And whose expectations are you actually trying to meet? You might feel like you're not good enough, frightened that your child's is going to miss out on schooling, and that you're failing as a parent. Schedules work well with some, but if they're having an off day, just like that light bulb, it's not going to work for you or them. This is a pandemic that we're going through, and we all need time to adjust. Our world has changed in such a short period of time, and we need to give ourselves time to adjust ourselves. So no child is going to learn properly if they're stressed. And I think that's what the teacher that Sophie was just saying about the headmaster's letter. The expectations there. Don't let COVID-19 be a period of time that is remembered by you and your child as a time where you were all upset and fighting. So have some fun. Do some cooking. That's a great learning curve for you all. And also at the same time, your child's going through a huge amount of changes as well. They can't see their friends, they can't play in the playground, they can't see their grandparents, and now you're replacing their teacher, so it's know that you're not doing that. So it's a period of time that we all just need to adjust. Things are gradually going back to normal now, but we still don't know what's happening in the future. So these times, we must not have too high expectations because these are unprecedented times. Dr. Bruce Perry has the pandemic toolkit for parents, and part of that is structuring your day. We all know that routine and structure is the best thing for children with FASD, and it is so important to try and keep some of this structure going. I've seen many professionals saying, don't worry about screen time for your children in these unprecedented times, or about the routine, they'll get back to it. But can I reinforce that you know your child the best? You are the one that knows how they will react. It is great that you're reaching out and getting some more ideas, but what works for one person may not necessarily work for everyone. And if you're going to give them extra screen time because someone says that that's a good idea, how is that going to affect you? Is it a good idea for you? So it might be for some, but for others it's not. So to also have family meals, keep a little bit of structure if that works for you. Limit media, I think that's very important because everything is about COVID-19 at the moment, and it's unknown. We don't know what's happening. So we don't want this unknown to be with your children all the time as well. Exercise, we know that's both good for you and your children. And reach out to others if you need help and try and help others. Practice good sleep hygiene and stay future positive. Nate Sheets also has a webinar that we recommend, and also there is a great book out there by Mona Delahook called Beyond Behaviours. So NOFASD UK has some great downloads as well, and on washing your hands and the use of hygiene. I also find that individuals, or especially children with FASD, often need a visual to be able to help them. For anyone that hasn't seen this, I think this is the most fantastic way to be able to describe having.
Do you see that? You guys saw that? You see how important it is to wash our hands? Hey, Isa, dip your finger inside the virus water. Okay. Did the virus move at all? Did any of the pepper flakes move?
No.
No, right? Okay. Now, Isa, take out your finger. Do you see any virus on your finger? Any pepper on your finger?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Now, we don't want the virus on our finger, right, you guys? So, Isa, can I ask you to dip your finger in soap, clean your finger? Okay. This is the importance of how we wash our hands. Now, Isa, does your finger have soap in it?
Yes.
Okay. Now, can you dip your finger back in the virus?
How did it move?
Do you see that?
It moved.
You guys saw that? You see how important it is to wash our hands?
So that's a great visual, I think, for parents to be able to show children the importance of washing their hands with soap. And NOFASD UK also has these fun ideas, and just remember that life skills are a part of education as well, which these can be downloaded there to have some fun with your child. We also have on our website resources for families there and a couple of blogs on the coronavirus. One is done by Prue Walker, who is a social worker, but I also need to stress the importance of self-care for you all. You're all doing an amazing job in supporting your child who so desperately needs your support, and it's not an easy task for you. To be honest with yourself, that working with a child with FASD can be very challenging. So talk to someone you trust. Seek support from professionals if you need to. Exercise and have activities to de-stress, and try and take some time out. Connection is the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard and valued. We have some webinars on our website as well. Eileen Devine has done 2 for us, and they are very, very good. If parents don't understand and remember the discrepancy between chronological age and developmental age, they often burn out. So please take care. And I'd just like to hand you over to Cheryl for some closing remarks here, Cheryl.
Thanks again, Robin. So earlier I spoke about disenfranchised grief and how that may be feeling for you or for someone you know. And I wish I had known about this when we had withdrawn our son from mainstream school and allowed myself to accept this grief for what it really was and just taken the time to do that. And this is why I'm so pleased to be part of this webinar series to support parents and carers whilst they're supporting their children learning at home. Working through these feelings first is so important to set up for the best outcomes possible. Right now, I really want to offer you hope. And that hope is coming to you right now from this webinar. These are real feelings and real stories that you're hearing through this webinar. Right here and right now is the place to share how we feel and recognise it for what it is. This is the place to ask for support and where we will do the best we can to provide it. And finally, be kind to yourself and don't judge how you are coping based on how you see or hear how others are coping. Thanks, Robin.
Thank you, Cheryl. I think that's very important information. And I would just like to say too, give yourself extra patience and grace. You don't have to be everything to everyone at the moment. Good enough is enough. You are enough. So, Sophie, do we have any questions?
Hi, Robin, we do. I should share my video, shouldn't I? We do. We've had a couple of questions come through. Some of them are similar. One of them is, will you send the link to the pandemic toolkit? And another one, somebody else is after a link for one of the other slides. Just as Robin mentioned at the beginning, I'm pleased to say that we will be sending you through a document after the webinar with all of the links to everything that you've seen on the site here. Another question I've got here, can I access the link to the letter from the principal? I'd like to share this with my school. We're getting a lot of email requests and it's very stressful. Yeah, I can resonate with that one. And I'm pleased to say yes, that you can actually access that blog on the NOFASD website, and we also will send you a link to that within the links documents as well. No problem at all. That's all the questions I have for now. Does anybody else want to send me through questions?
Thank you very much, Sophie. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us today for the first session. As I mentioned at the beginning of the second session, the next one will be next Tuesday, the 12th of May at 2 p.m, an hour earlier this time. With all the changes on restrictions that the government are revealing, we haven't actually set a date for the third one yet, but we'd love to have some input for what you would like to hear in our webinars. And so please, take care and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.